Hi, folks. Welcome to Slibber Camp. It's getting late and people are punchy. Kristin Stelmok is in the house from the English department, recent award winner of all transformative pedagogies. She's exactly who you want in your corner during a pandemic when you have to change up all your teaching in just a few weeks. We're going to be talking tonight about some of the stuff that we've learned really together over the years through the work that we've been doing primarily in open education. So I'm going to try to share the slide deck, but also try to write in it later. So I might have to do that in kind of a complicated way, but let's see. They only gave me this one choice. It's not going to work, I bet. Because I'm guessing you still see my edit slide, is that right? Or do you see their good one? Somebody has to talk because you're all covered up.
Still edit.
Edit.
Still edit.
Okay, I actually figured out now why that is. I guess you actually have to click present before you click share, or you're not going to get that option. Is that what the secret is?
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
Robin, if you share your desktop, then whatever you're seeing, you can show. That's a trick that has worked for me.
That option, I just didn't see it. Yeah. Now, that's another question I have. Can I just get this answered before we go on? If I'm sharing my desktop and like my dad texts me and a notification comes up and I'm just sharing desktop, that comes on, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
But not if you're making your slideshow the full screen.
Right. Gotcha. Thanks for that tip. Okay, so we are still talking about the ACE framework. We actually have right here under connection, reduced disposability as one of the frameworks under connection. And that's primarily because what we're thinking about here a little bit is not so much what we've been talking about most recently with connections between teachers and students, but also connections between the students' work and the rest of the world. So we're talking in some ways about impact during this session. So disposable assignments is not a term that we coined here. It's a term that was coined by a guy who's really big in open education named David Wiley. And he describes disposable assignments as assignments that students complain about doing and faculty complain about grading. They add no value to the world. After a student spends 3 hours creating it, a teacher spends 30 minutes grading it, and then the student throws it away. And then my favorite quote, not only do these assignments add no value to the world, they actually suck value out of the world. The reason that I like this definition is that it doesn't suggest that everything you throw away is valueless. Sometimes we do things that you throw away, but it has value, right? Like if I'm brainstorming something, I may not even want to save that list. I might intentionally want to get rid of it because, you know, I've moved on. You may also sometimes use disposability as a way of reducing threat, right? If we do this, you know, it's not going to go anywhere. We're just playing, we're experimenting, we're trying. What we're really talking about with disposability is that question of whether something is worth doing. And when neither the faculty member nor the student can identify the worth, then we want to ask some questions about why we are doing it. So one question we sometimes have with disposable assignments is about hoop jumping. Sometimes you might practice jumping through a hoop because you need to get better at your, you know, aim and your height and whatever. But if you're just jumping through hoops for no reason, like you're just going to keep endlessly jumping through hoops and you're not building towards anything, why are you jumping through that hoop? I certainly, as the parent of a high schooler, and some of you who are parents, especially during remote learning, have maybe seen a lot more hoop jumping lately, where everyone is just sitting around going, why are we doing this? So disposable assignments, what we're going to give you some options tonight are specific things people have tried to reduce disposability and have a sense of impact and a sense of reason for why we're doing the work. So Wiley actually really tries to expressly define what a non-disposable assignment is. So coming from him and other folks like Derek Bruff, who is at Vanderbilt, we get definitions of non-disposable assignments that add value to the world beyond simply being something the students have to do to get a grade. So this follows very nicely, I think, from the last session. One of the ideas that Bruff came up with is this idea of a student as producer. So the idea here is that students create or produce knowledge rather than just consuming it. In my field, the idea of production is kind of a problematic term sometimes, right? The idea that you're creating, for example, a product, which can then like be sold on the market, is not always what we're about. So I like to think of it more as students as creators, but any of that idea of students not just receiving, which is that banking model of education that Freire talks about, open up my brain, put the information in. This is a little bit more of an upload model where we're thinking about what can students contribute back to knowledge, even as they are receiving some things and learning them. Related to disposable and non-disposable assignments is another idea that dovetails with the last presentation quite well, which is the idea of authentic assessments. So lots of people use this phrase in education. One way of thinking about them is that you assess students by having them do things that are similar to what they might do with the skills in the real world. So you remember Martha in the last session talking about, you know, if you're not going to have to memorize the capitals of the 50 states, you know, if you become a geographer, and I don't know, you are, so I don't know, then why would you have to memorize those for this kind of an exam? So you're trying to create assessments that really connect to the real work that people do in your fields, not just the created work that we make for students who have to hoop jump. So that is an authentic assessment, which is kind of the assessment version, right, of the non-disposable assignments. So one of the differences between authentic assessments and non-disposable assignments is that authentic assessments can still be great, but without adding further value to the world after they're completed and marked. So you may just dispose of them. They are just there because they're already serving their purpose, which is to assess the student. So they may not have a life beyond the moments that that assessment is taking place, and they're still super valuable for the students. So some examples of authentic assessments, and also I should let you know that I didn't make any of this up. So if you want the actual smart people who talk more intelligently about this stuff, you'll get those when you get the slide deck, because all the citations are in the notes there on Google. But here are some of the examples that are cited. Students in a business course working to create a presentation that's similar to a presentation they might give in a business setting. I won't go through all of these because none of these are a surprise. And that's one of the reasons I take pride working someplace like Plymouth State, where we are so teaching oriented. We've been good at authentic assessment for a long time, I think. And when you aren't good at authentic assessment, believe you me, it gets around amongst the students, because so many people are doing really great stuff like this, I think, at Plymouth these days. So what makes an assignment non-disposable is that it adds value to the world within or beyond the class after it's completed. In other words, what the students produce through their coursework is useful and usable by others beyond the instructor. Now, Christina is a friend of mine, and it's a great article, and I totally subscribe to the ideas here. But I also want to point out that there's things here you may or may not relate to. The question of what's valuable is not something that we are all going to agree on across disciplines and ideologies. We've had this wonderful thing, I think someone was talking about it earlier in the chat, about utility, right? Is there value to uselessness? Is there value, I think Abby or somebody was asking about wandering. Liz, I know, has asked several times when we talk about non-disposable assignments, like, do I have to always make everything for the public, Robin? You know, and the answer, of course, is No, right? Sometimes we do things more privately, we do things for ourselves, for another person. So the question of impact is very personal, it's very discipline specific, it's very contextual, but really what we're talking about is not just how students can be impacted by their education and transformed by their education, but how students can have impact and transform the worlds around them. That's really the key of the non-disposable assignments. A kind of non-disposable assignment is a renewable assignment. Renewable assignments are very similar to non-disposable with the exception that they add this sort of open licensing piece. So renewable assignments produce student work that's not only made available for others to use, but that's also openly licensed so that those other people can then reuse it or revise it. In order to be renewable, student work needs to have an open license that explicitly states that others may revise and reuse the material without asking for permission from the copyright holder. You know, you could break all these rules if you want. Nobody gets to say exactly what a renewable assignment is. But the idea here, and I know Martha's done great work creating not so much renewable assignments, but the idea of a renewable world of assignments, which is the DS 106 assignment bank. Digital storytelling is a course that she helped to invent and taught for many years. And one of the cool things that they have is a website where everybody who does certain assignments in the course posts their assignments up there. And those more and more assignments keep coming up and people create new assignments and post those and then other people do those assignments. So there's lots of ways to contribute, but the idea of a renewable assignment is that people can keep participating in that so more knowledge can grow. I'll give you some examples as we get to the later slide where we're going to talk about what there are some examples are of non-disposable and renewables and really go through it. Kristin has been doing this kind of work with renewable and non-disposable and impactful stuff with her students. So she's going to talk a little bit about how this worked on the ground in her classes.
Hi, and I'm going to apologize again. My internet connection is pretty terrible, so if I go out, Robin, hopefully you'll keep going. But yeah, so this first slide here, everyone can hear me? Okay. The first slide here is a screenshot of the blog that my students in modern British literature were working on this semester. This was my first time teaching this course, probably my only time teaching this course here at Plymouth, but it was so much fun, and the blog was a big part of that. What I liked about the blog was that students can post independently. They could comment on their classmates' posts. I'll talk about the strength. There are tags, different posts with the same topics, themes, or authors. Can you hear me? I'm just making sure because I feel like, okay. I thought I was talking to myself.
You're doing fantastic. It's coming through fine.
Okay, thank you. Great. And a blog that's so great is that this can be shared beyond the classroom. And I've noticed a few people outside of our class have started following the blog, which is kind of cool. And let's see, and I'd encourage you all, the link is in the notes of this slide. Check it out and see some of the amazing work these students did, largely independently, especially in the second half of the semester. You can see a little glimpse of Jess Christian's twine that's just extraordinary. It's kind of an homage, but also a creative and analytical piece inspired by Auden's Musée des Beaux-Arts. It's extraordinary. So you should check that out. That was.
You know Jess is here. Do you know Jess is here?
Oh, hi, Jess.
Yeah, Jess, do you want to say anything about? Do you want to say anything about that? She was here a second ago.
I'm here, Kristin. No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I did a thing. It was my first time using Twine. If anyone's had me in classes, I'm not creative. I choose a paper even when I'm offered something else. And I was like, this is my last semester. I'm gonna do something that takes effort. I mean, papers take effort. Honestly, I was like, this will be easier than paper. I'm writing a poem. But yeah, I did Twine. It was kind of hard to figure out how to share it. And I wanted to go further. I don't know if you know Twine, but you're supposed to go like layers in deeper and deeper and get lost, but you don't get lost in this. It's only like one layer. But it was fun. I wrote poems and they felt important to me. This poem felt important to think about. I was also trying not to do every single project on Virginia Woolf because that's not the point of this class. So yeah, it was fun.
Thanks, Jess. So yeah, and Jess was responding in that piece for the final project, which I gave students choice between a traditional essay and an unessay, and none of them chose the unessay. Pull down below Jess's, that's an amazing book that's also kind of inspired by Byron's poem Darkness, which he wrote in 1816, which is called The Year Without a Summer, the same summer that he spent with Mary Shelley when she wrote Frankenstein. Anyway, it's gorgeous, and it really kind of layers some of the lines of Byron's poem with what she's experiencing, what we're all experiencing with the pandemic. It's amazing. Another one, a student who got really into Robbie Burns, did a video where he recited some of his own poems inspired by Robbie Burns that were dedicated to his parakeet, and were so, I mean, I watched the video and I just started like sobbing because he's, you know, a wonderful person, a very social person, and like so many people is really struggling. And it was amazing to see what he did with these poems. So that's giving students just that much freedom, especially with so little structure. This semester was kind of scary, but they rose to the occasion in extraordinary ways. And I was so glad that we did it. And some of them have shared those pieces on this blog. I didn't require that because a lot of them were really personal, but I'm hoping to encourage some more folks to share some more of those on this blog. We share the, I saw your post. Yeah, so that's kind of the blog for that class. This here is just really the skeleton, the start of a longer term project. So as opposed to a blog, which was kind of specific to that semester in that one class, this is a class I teach most semesters, Feminism in the US. We call it the F word here at Plymouth. And my goal with this website is to make it a much more like a longer term project that will eventually replace our big fat textbook that we have. This website will have all the same, it does have all the same features as a class blog. We didn't do much, I didn't have students posting directly on it this semester, but I'm posting some of their work now, kind of in those little boxes below. And let's see, so one part, yeah, in this, that this class is doing is, or one specific assignment, and something that I hope other classes will keep doing is, in this case, it's for an infographic, and I think you've all seen infographics. They're these pretty little, it's what they say, right? It's an information, a graphic with lots of information in it. I heard, I met a professor of psychology at UNH who uses analytical essay. Students analyze the representation of mental illness in the media, and but they do an infographic instead of an essay or a research paper. And what I found with the infographics is that students love to create them. They get to be really creative. They get to do research. They still need to find and cite reliable sources. They can practice basic design. The tools that are out there are so user-friendly that, you know, even very intimidated by technology can do great things with these infographics. and I guess, yeah, if we can look at the next slide, specifically this class that I had this semester made infographics celebrating Black American suffragists. So some of the folks that don't get much attention in our history section of the class. My ultimate goal for this was to be able to display these in the library to celebrate the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, which of course mostly benefited white women for quite a long time. And I'm still thinking about ways we can share these. And what's so great about these being digital is that there's lots of different things we can do, even if we don't end up getting to print them out and sharing them and share them physically somewhere. So I'm really excited about this. Students love making them. They're great. So that was quickly some of the stuff we've been up to this semester.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try this crazy thing. I literally, aren't I sharing my screen? Because that went away.
It says open collab. So
yeah, I know, but I have no Zoom. Hold on. I have no Zoom controls. I'm gonna have to Zoom for the rest of my life. I can't get out. There we go. I found it. Because what I'm gonna try to do, just bear with me. I'm sure this will be worth it. Jesus. Oh, share screen, desktop, share. Okay, now you see all of my secret things. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in here to this PowerPoint because I thought it'd be fun to just try to populate this. So I'll show you that what I've got here so far for non-disposable and renewable assignments, and I'm just kind of throwing some labels on there so that if it's helpful to you, you can think about those two different terms. And I thought what we'd do is just list some projects because I've worked now with a whole bunch of you over the last year and almost all of you are doing these. What I find happens though is when you hear about somebody else's that, you know, it's like a light bulb goes off in your head. I never thought to do that. So I thought we just sort of crowdsource some of them. I already have on here, some of you already, of course, know about the anthologies. Abby has made these. I've made them in English, where our students worked to create course replacements basically for commercial and literature anthologies. So they basically edited and wrote out content for those anthologies. That's a great renewable assignment because we openly licensed it, and then every semester students would add more content to that piece and done great stuff. Other common examples that people talk about when they talk about non-disposable assignments, for example, writing a letter to the editor of a local paper if you're studying certain political issues. I did want to put a link in the deck to Wiki.edu for those of you who don't know about this. And some of our folks, I think there were about 3 or 4 who participated in the USNH Wikipedia project over the last year that the collab sponsored, where they trained folks to do assignments related to editing Wikipedia. But obviously it's a renewable assignment because students do research, and instead of having that sort of go into a drawer and die, they're able to put that on Wikipedia, which then can over time, you know, continue to contribute. But the important thing here is that Wiki.edu is a nonprofit affiliated with Wikipedia that will actually help you develop all the skills you need to do that with your classes. So they'll assign you kind of a coach, and your person will help you create your learning outcomes, draft your instructions for students, help you train your students, and walk you through the assignment. You can do everything from a short 2-week assignment or even shorter to a semester-long massive research project through Wiki.edu, and it's all free to get that support, which is pretty cool. Obviously, we also do non-tech things all the time, which may be hard and in some ways may be easy, right? You think about something like creating a permaculture garden at a nursing home. Your students, you know, if they're studying certain kinds of permaculture, sustainability, sustainable architecture, may be able to actually go out and do things like that sort of on their own and document that through the course of more of a group class. So I thought we would just have people share some of the things that you've tried. Obviously, you know, blogs is a very common one. Do you mind just like unmuting yourself, or if you want putting stuff in? I would prefer if you said it because it's a little hard for me to follow the chat, but I see here the museum exhibits, which is a great one. One of my favorite ones so far has been what Sarah Parrish's students did in D&M by building that new amazing art history gallery, and they curated this phenomenal exhibition of prisoners' art, and it was like super moving. They built the gallery, curated the exhibit, put it up, and now it's sustained and funded. It was, I mean, not a project, it was just so flipping amazing. Okay, what else you got, people?
This is Martha. I've had students work with local nonprofits and community organizations on digital and social media projects.
Yep, what else you got?
I've had students do small research projects where the audience is like a campus office, like 1 year the financial aid office, and in another class, the Healthy PSU office program. So it doesn't have to be off-campus audience to be useful to someone.
Yeah, that's great.
It's Martha. I have another one, but it's not mine. It's a colleague of mine from Mary Washington who had students doing digital history projects, semester-long projects. And the wonderful thing about them was that every 2 years when he teach the class, students would revisit those and build them, improve them. So they're kind of ongoing digital history resources. They're pretty cool if anybody wants links.
That reminds me of the QR code one that Marcia's students did 1 year on campus with all the buildings having codes and histories. And I'm too tired to keep writing, and I don't see why I should when we can just talk about it, because you can populate these kinds of things from just about anywhere. What other examples do you have? There's so many good ones coming in.
So can I share something? I'm kind of new to this type of assignment because of the topics that I traditionally teach. But this semester, especially after we moved to online in my air quality class, one of the types of assignments they could choose to do was to create mini lectures on topics related to air quality of their interest. And what ended up being was they would prepare a PowerPoint and they would narrate. So it was almost like a YouTube video. And every single time I regretted not recording, because I could imagine a database of all these small topics of different connections with different disciplines, of things I would not even have thought of myself. We ended up learning so much from each other. And it would be great to start building a database of that throughout the years, because every time they're going to choose different topics. So it's something I haven't done, but I could definitely see doing after learning some things from this pivot to online.
Yeah, and that is just so awesome too, because it, let's just say we upload those to YouTube. We can put a Creative Commons license on them, and they automatically then become open educational resources. And then people will use them in the kinds of modules that we were talking about yesterday, which is really sort of amazing. The other thing is that you can put that stuff on YouTube and give it an open license, which is wonderful. But we also want to give it to Kristen Wixon to put into our repository, because that woman has a way with metadata that is just magical. So when she goes in the back end and she tags that video, it means lots of people who are building stuff are going to find it much more than they would find it through YouTube. So if you have students who can make that content, we can do all sorts of cool things to make sure it really has impact that's going to be powerful. Some of you might know of NOBA, which is a psychology organization, and they sponsor a video contest every year where students make short or actually practitioners, make short films on psychology ideas, and all of them, in order to be submitted to the contest, have to be openly licensed. So they get all this OER out of it, and then they give a prize, which I think is about $6,000 for the top video. And 1 year, 2 undergrads from Simon Fraser University won that top prize. So it's just like an awesome story all around.
One thing I went to, what the heck is it called? It's a conference for contemplative pedagogy in higher ed. It was in UMass. Carolyn was there, but I met this person. They had people presenting, and he's from somewhere out west, and he teaches like information literacy. And he showed me this project where he has like an Instagram, and he'll just take pictures or screenshots of information, and so, which is literally like the idea is to make a point that like everything is information, and then write like caption, and so he does that with all his classes. And so like everyone goes around just like taking pictures and like integrating it into like how you see the world, which I think is really effective. And I ended up, when I did a individual enrollment of women in contemporary American culture, I ended up using my Instagram to take pictures to represent like the thing I was talking about, and then I posted at it. The only bad thing is that there's a character limit for Instagram. So I just write it in a notepad and take a screenshot and have like
That is
5.
not good for Jess. Do not give the girl.
It's so bad.
So good on Twitter, but yeah, that's funny.
I'm gonna, I just put the link to his Instagram, which is
awesome.
it's pretty cool. But yeah.
I think we're coming closer on our time, and one of the things I just wanted to throw out as a final closure is that I think this dovetails in many, many ways with cluster learning. One of the things we discovered as we started doing more project-based learning and more open education is that we naturally were much more interested in assignments that had impact and that could be shared, and that had, in some cases, a commons approach, where I was interested in how it could contribute. But the other is that if we're going to be online for at least part of our semester in a way that many of us weren't before, meaning like many of us taught only in face-to-face modalities and pretty much dwelled there. But now we all are finding that we may have to use this connective technology called the internet. So if that's the case, you actually already have under your belt kind of a chunk of what is usually the heavier lift in a non-disposable assignment, which is that you're using usually some kind of, not always, right? You can create a permaculture garden at the nursing home, but often we're creating things and trying to share them with larger communities, and technology is super helpful for that. I think Martha and I would definitely say this is not a super great time to take on like really ambitious new technologies or large scale new projects. But a lot of you, when we were working on project-based stuff, realized that, hey, you know what, if I had a website, this project that I'm doing, sure, like, you know, I remember talking to Kate Harrington as she's doing all this incredible work on the Canadian border, and it was just like, hey, we want to not let this go away after this semester, because this could really, people could build on it for years and years and years. So if that's the case, do consider stopping in. Martha in particular, this is completely her wheelhouse, like helping you build online architectures to house your projects, to let the public participate in the work that you're doing. So that's the kind of thing that maybe tomorrow or Thursday you might want to connect with her and make an appointment. Because if you just want to tackle a smaller project, it would be super great for this summer. Anybody have any last questions before I wrap it up and head towards?
This is Laura. Can I say something?
Gotcha.
So I just wanted to say that some of the feedback I got from students this semester is so much of their work turned into writing. So, you know, instead of being in class and able to discuss, they had to post on a discussion forum, and they, you know, instead of an exam, they had a short answer or an essay or whatever. So I think another way to think about having all these different types of assignments that are not just the disposability aspect of it, but like an infographic is not writing another essay. So I think that's another sort of plug for like thinking about different kinds of assignments, is that when students are, all their classes are online, they get really fatigued that like their only way of communicating what they're learning or communicating with each other is this. So thinking about that too.
Yeah, that's a great comment. And I mean, we could keep going forever because I'm also seeing this really important comment from Rochelle about supporting under-resourced existing projects. When we head into project-based learning, which is such a part of the non-disposable environment, the worst thing that we can do, and you know, Jess Dutille is a really good teacher about this as well, is just wading in to a community that has a need, which is the kind of thing we want to do in the academy, right? Is like meet community need. And then you wade in there with 18 students who are leaving in 5 months. And some of them are also like doing C work, which is fine for them, but not super great for the homeless shelter, you know? So there's all sorts of issues about that kind of stuff in the projects that we're doing that I know a lot of you have wrestled with. That can be one reason why it is kind of nice to work in digital environments though, because, you know, to a certain degree, if we fail in the digital environment, it can be a little bit different than failing in like a clinical or sort of on-site kind of environment. And there, we have the ability to clean it up sometimes before it has too much negative effect. So all great comments. And yeah, Denise, we can do so much on campus too, especially now. Plymouth State needs you and your charitable approaches to projects. Okay, we are headed into the final stretch. I am going to stop recording on